Taoiseach, along the same lines, we still have an absolutely devastating housing crisis that has multiple facets to it. But one of those is the cliff edge of thresholds when it comes to social housing income thresholds, where people find themselves threatened with the possibility of homelessness through no fault of their own, but then discover that they've now gone over the threshold, even though they may have been on a housing list for years. And it's a cliff edge, because once you're denied the possibility of social housing because of income, you're also denied HAP. But the cost rental, in many cases, you're disallowed from on affordability grounds. From income grounds, you fit. From affordability grounds, because your income isn't sufficient, you don't fit. This has to be addressed as a matter of urgency, but also the trap I mentioned to you before, where if you go into emergency accommodation, you're no longer allowed it. And the other one is people who are just, I got one family in, a family of 8. One of their kids is working as a junior doctor in one of our most well-known hospitals. The rest are kids, and the parents are dependent on social welfare. After 15 years on the list, they're all homeless now. They are over the threshold for social housing. Right? So nothing is available for them. One of their daughters working in our hospitals looking after our sick, and they're all homeless and not eligible for social housing or HAP. It's crazy.
Deputy, I realise it's important.
Thanks very much, Leska and Corla. There's a lot of issues there. I mean, let me just say at the outset, in direct answer to Deputy Durkin's question and a number of other people really asking what are we doing and what can we do. We are building housing again at a level that we haven't seen in a very, very long period of time. And I know to people today looking for a roof over their head. I know for people today wondering can they move out of the box room. I know for people today worried about insecure tenure. I know that can't come fast enough, but there are real encouraging signs now. We have built almost the same number of houses seen commenced construction in the first 5 months of this year than in all of last year. We are going to set new housing targets that are going to raise the bar. When I talked about only a couple of months ago about needing to build 250,000 more homes between 2025 and 2030, many people scoffed at it. I think people are beginning to see that that is now absolutely achievable and necessary. And indeed, the Housing Commission says we even need to do more than that. And I think we're seeing a system that now is going to be able to deliver that. We will be setting out new housing targets later this year. We will be showing in granular detail, as I said in my original answer, the composition, the mix of that in terms of social, affordable and private housing as well. And in the meantime, we will continue to invest in emergency accommodation and emergency solutions for the likes of your constituents that you reference as well. In relation to the rough sleeper count, I'm looking forward to meeting some homeless organisations myself directly on this shortly, because I do want to see what we can do to make more progress on the issue of rough sleeping. I think Deputy O'Callaghan is right that we shouldn't in any way, shape or form, not that we do, accept that this just becomes a kind of norm or an acceptable part of our housing system. We're better than that as a country. I can tell you some of the things we're doing around trying to provide more emergency accommodation, increasing the homeless funds as well for our local authorities. But clearly there is a need to do more, but also maybe to understand more as to some of the practical measures that we can take, and I'm very much open to doing that. I think the point Deputy Murnane O'Connor made in relation to local authority lists, this is something that comes up in my constituency office from time to time as well. I do think we need to look at an entire overhaul of how people actually apply for social housing. If you live in a certain part of my county, you might be on the border of the other county, and yet you're on the list for one county and not the other. If you miss your application form, you're then having a row to try and get yourself put back in the 2 or 3 years that you've lost being added back. Now, I know there's some work underway in relation to this, but I will seek an urgent update for the Deputy and for others maybe in relation to where that's at to Deputy Boyd Barrett and others. The issue around thresholds, which you do raise regularly. I mean, I do make the point we raised the thresholds for social housing recently. You make the point back it wasn't enough. We are going to consider what more can be done in this space. There are definitely anomalies in the system where people fall between stools in terms of not qualifying for one thing or just going a little bit over the other. And I'm in engagement with the Minister for Housing in relation to that too. Look, on the issue of on the issue of house prices. I mean, we've seen a number of reports out in the last couple of days. We saw about the DAFT report. We also saw the CSO's Residential Property Price Index, which is probably seen as the authoritative source of data. Last week, that did find that prices are 9.6% above their highest level at the peak of the property boom in April 2007. And Dublin residential property prices are 1.8% lower than the 2007 peak. But there is one thing that doesn't often get talked about when you come to house prices, which is income levels as well. And since 2007, average weekly earnings have increased by over 30% compared to an increase in house prices of over 10%. That's not me suggesting in any way, shape or form that housing or housing affordability is where it needs to be, but we do need to just take a look in the round when we're quoting data. Research by the central bank shows that the price to income ratio was 5.5 in 2006, it was 4.7 in 2018, and it's now 4.6. So this shows while house prices are still far too high for far too many, that the level of fluctuation perhaps isn't as often presented with raw data as well. In terms of Deputy Violin Wynne, around that issue of oversight and emergency accommodation and issues specifically in relation to Clare, County Clare, I'll bring those queries directly to the Minister for Housing and ask that he might raise them with the local authority and perhaps come back to you in your office as well. Thank you.